Yo, what is good, guys? You are tuned in for this week's episode of Saloon Sessions, and we got some awesome guests here today. We got Wasim and LeVar. It's going to be pretty dope, man. And if you're wondering, I'm not in the normal lab. And if you're wondering where we're at, for those that might actually know what this facility is, this is Bell Labs, now called Bell Works, and pretty much almost everything within the tech industry was invented here in the last 30 years. We're talking about the transistor, the laser, cell phone technology. I mean, you name it. So this is a pretty cool place. If you look around, which maybe I'll show you guys a sneak peek before we go, it's like set up like a giant, you could almost call it like a mall, but for businesses, mostly tech companies. So for example, Cisco works out of here, NVIDIA works out of here, ICIM, there's a couple, big tech companies that work in like the HR field. So it's pretty cool. It's almost become like a tech hub for the East Coast. So a lot of interesting people come through, always having conversations. They have like get-togethers and stuff here. It's pretty cool. That being said, hey, what's going on, guys? Everybody doing good today? I guess we'll pass it around, let everybody introduce themselves. Go ahead, Sleazy, take it away.
But hey, don't listen to him. It's just a fancy background he has there.
Yeah,
like it doesn't actually exist. No. It's like LeVar's. He cannot go to that piano, over there and actually play it the same way Chris cannot go and actually touch whatever.
It's all AI. These are AI people behind me. They're not real people.
Yeah, it's like the same GIF playing. GIF or GIF?
GIF. I always called it a good question. GIF or GIF? I always called it a GIF, but I don't know about you guys. That being said, go ahead, LeVar, introduce yourself and all that good stuff and who you represent, and we can jump in.
Absolutely. Well, I definitely appreciate the opportunity to come on to speak to you all today and to have this conversation. My name's LeVar. They call me VAR, and I'm with the A-Star Degens. I'm a council member. We're the biggest DAO or community within the A-Star network, and I do a YouTube channel called Polka Dot Specialist as well. So it's a pleasure to be here, and let's get this conversation started.
Sounds good. Wasim, take it away, brother.
Yeah, thank you for having me. My name is Wasim. I'm the co-founder of Chainsight. We're basically going through working with Soneium as well as other main chains over here. So what we do is we're basically like a next generation open data network. We support Soneium itself as well as Soneium dApps, especially on the DeFi space. And since entertainment's coming in, we're going to be able to support that as well.
Sounds cool. So why Soneium? Talk to me. So what about you, Wasim? We'll start with you, because I know LeVar's got a lot of history. They've been building over there from A-Star from like day one. So before we get into the nitty gritty of that, tell me what kind of attracted you to Soneium and some of those things.
Actually, I would need to talk about my kind of, the background. So yeah, I'm actually Japanese.
That's awesome.
So
like fully Japanese?
I'm half Japanese, half Indian.
Okay.
Born and raised in Tokyo, lived in New York, lived in Dubai, living different part of the world. And so I've known actually, before Aster, back in 2017-18 when it was the concept stage. So that was one of the kind of factor.
Okay.
I'm nearly 40. I'm 40 this year. Yeah.
Okay, look at you aging good. You age pretty good. Okay.
Yeah. Thanks.
It's the Asian face,
oh yeah, it's definitely that, right? And,
I was about to say, yeah.
Separately, I've known the Sony team like for almost 20-25 years. The entire
awesome.
management team. So when I heard about it, Sony coming in on the blockchain, it was just, there was no doubt. Just jumping in, so
that's awesome.
Just representing Japan.
You say you know these guys. So obviously, StarTale's involved for the management purposes. A-Star's involved as strategic purposes. Obviously, also Soda being like a co-founder, so to speak, over there as well. How did you guys originally meet? Like, what's the story there? Come on, you reeled me in. Did you go to school? Did you you suckered me in? I'm here.
I used to hang around. Nightlife, I guess, since I was 10. So that's where I met all the.
It's not like
adults.
a kind of bad. in Japan.
So you were a
No,
party
no.
guy. So you were a party guy on the low. That's what it was. It's okay. We all did a little partying in
Yeah,
our
yeah.
day.
And like it's different
Right.
in Japan, the party life, than in the rest of the world. Just to point it out.
No, they turn up.
True
It's
that.
pretty. It gets pretty lit out there. They turn up for sure.
Yeah. So since, my very, very young age, all the adults were like friends, they tried to kind of bring me in here and there, introducing me to people. And that was kind of the entrance of, the Japanese kind of corporates, Japanese, the CEOs, how they work. So I started working since I was 15. I was always interested in building something. I was always interested in, uh, getting things right, right. So the connection was there, and time flies. After several years, all this like blockchain started to happen. I mean, when it comes to Japan, it was maybe like one or two projects that was coming up when, you know, um, especially, VAR, Sleazy, you guys might know. There were only very few. While,
Yeah.
Ethereum was popping up and all these guys were popping up. Japan was back then, like, I would say like 2014,
Okay.
13, 14. Like CZ was there, like Vitalik was there, like they were
Yeah.
saying that those
Oh, so
small
you've been around as
meetups.
long as me then. I jumped in 2015, like right before Ethereum went live. So obviously I went to like the first NFT NYC, then or all that good stuff. So I was just say I'm surprised. Maybe I might have even ran out if you were going to some of like the inner circle parties for like Forbes and all those guys. I might have ran into you at one of those. That's interesting. And I was
But
about to
yeah,
see if you've been in that one.
I had a different background, so it was
Okay.
more of more of family office actually. So
Okay.
that's one of the
Oh,
reason I
cool.
moved to the Middle East,
Okay.
and we started deploying as an LP into crypto VCs back in 2015. So that's when I started looking into crypto pretty heavily. So that was basically the start, and I think the story of Soneium starts. Even never thought about it, right? Like a Japanese corporate coming in
Yeah,
as,
yeah, yeah.
working with Startail, working with Aster,
It's
coming
shocking.
into
It's
blockchain.
crazy.
It's very shocking because I think what you see from outside as Japan and what you, as Japanese, like understanding how Japanese corporates work or understanding how regulation works, it's actually mind blowing.
Are you exciting? Are you excited for the fact that so Japan's leading the way and one of the countries that's kind of paving the way in Web3 and crypto regulations? Like, they're kind of saying, hey, we want to usher in a whole new era, which is really exciting because I think Japanese culture has always played such like a monumental role in society as far as, technology is concerned and pushing culture forward, which is why personally I'm really excited to see them involved in this whole space. So seeing how this, everything's playing out now with the presidency and Trump in office and in Japanese, your government pushing forward for it, it looks like we're moving into like this golden era. How do you feel about that? What's your take on that?
And before we continue, it's also kind of I want to point out, Japan is like very conservative and very modern at the same time. It's like especially in terms of design, because I know Chris is a very design nerd. You know
I'm a design
how
guy.
in Japan they have like all this design, which like all of different colors, like in your face, which in Western world looks kind of
I think it's awesome.
unintuitive. And
I think it's so cool.
yeah, okay. I mean,
Good
I'm
style.
not sure if I would like it, but yeah, like if you have been to Japan, it's like it's all in your face, like it's so like a rainbow of so many different colors.
That's how
And
New York's like that, depending on where you go as well. But Japan has their own. There's nothing like it. They're really like Tokyo and all that is, from my understanding, it's pretty incredible. But yeah, your take, like now seeing the regulations, you know what I mean? How has it been from you watching all this play out since, like you said, the corporate environment is so radically different? Now seeing it change, how has that been for you?
I mean, when it comes to regulations, and it's not like financial advice, political advice, anything like that. But I think there's a gap between what we see from outside and what you when you're inside, like I mentioned, and there's a gap between how uh, the parliament or the regulatory frameworks. I mean, back when FTX happened, right, back in 2022, a lot of Japanese people were saved because of the regulations, right? unlike US or any other countries. But at the same time, I think it's still going to take time especially for politicians to understand, from regulatory bodies to understand why this is needed. Of course, prime minister changes, people changes all the time. And I think there is still a gap, to be honest. Like, that's my gut feeling. It might not go into, like, it's not like a hype, like what US is happening right now. Like, every single minute you'll be hearing about it if you're in US, but not in Japan as of now. And I think the pioneer, the people behind Web3 in Japan has been, not only struggling, but at the same time, like, really focusing on how to implement this into, uh, government level, regulatory level, and have this Web3 kind of narrative stick out.
There hasn't been like any Gary Gensler here, right? In Japan.
Yeah, who's your Gary Gensler? Do you have one of those?
No, I wouldn't say it's one
Nice.
particular guy. It's more of the government itself, right? So there's always the takebacks. If there's a proposal coming up, sounds very nice, gets pulled back, or the people change. Now you have to restart again. So again, if you've worked in corporates, you understand how politics works.
Yeah, it's bad. It's bad. I unfortunately, most of my career I started. That's for another time. But I will tell you this: outside of Web 2, before I even came into Web 3, and then when I got into corporate in Web 3, I was like, oh my god, it was a nightmare compared to that. It's even more different. I was gonna say, LeVar, jump in, man.
I wanted to add something on that.
Yeah, please.
So when I've been in A-Star Network since the beginning. Okay. I was part of the Parachain auctions, and as a investor. So I was interested in getting the coins. So I was in part of Parachain auctions, locked up my coins for a certain amount of time to get them and stuff like that. And over time, I was doing my research, and I liked how they were incorporated. Japan, it was like Japan was one of the main narratives regarding it, and the different partners that they were going to have coming in. But one thing that I thought was real interesting, and it's kind of segues into what y'all were talking about, was how they talked about the story about how Japan had missed out on Web 2. And because they had missed out on Web 2, they made it like one of their goals to not miss Web 3, which is crypto and this new layer of the internet. And so that's one of the reasons why they had incorporated some of the early regulations. Now, there was pros and cons to that, because the regulations, some deterrents, I guess, on how the regulations were structured initially, like that. And they had to kind of figure some different things out. But just the fact that that as a overall, that they want it to be such a big initiative, it shows that there's a lot of promise that this is something that's going to be big in that area. And so that's why I'm kind of excited about the Sony and the A-Star and all of that. Yeah. That could be the hub, not just for A-Star Network and Soneium, but there could be other Japanese companies as well that starts to adopt this particular chain as well.
Tell us a little bit about your journey. So you've been here for a long time with A-Star, since, like you said at the beginning. What's that been like for you, watching the A-Star evolution to now? Like, talk a little bit about, because the one big thing I want to discuss today for a lot of the fans out there is not just learning the history of how this is you guys are the perfect people to have on the show for this topic, because it's really about not only the history of all this and how it's unfolded, but also the onboarding experience of that. So tell me a little bit, LeVar, how did you first hear about A-Star? How did you get onboarded? Walk us through the whole experience of what that's been like up to now. It's got to be mind-blowing for you.
Yeah, absolutely. So I started off, I loved polka dot, and that's why my channel was Polka Dot Specialist. And I liked the passive income ability of, it had the higher interest rate, but then also the technology being able to be actually the new Web3. Like I believe the Web3 term came from Polkadot because they were trying to bring all these different technologies together to be able to communicate. So right now what people don't realize is that these different technologies don't really work well together, and Polkadot is trying to be that layer to make it easier. So that's one thing. They call that layer 0. So I kind of saw that. And for me, when it came to investments, because initially I came in from investments, I was real big into network effects. Somebody that's going to be dealing with all these different entities needing to use them. And I saw them as possibly having a network effect, where they would have a lot of different participants needing to use this particular chain. So kind of fast forward a little bit. The other thing is, like I talked about with the parachain auctions, it was a way that you could be an early investor and get some of the early tokens by pretty much lending out your Polkadot, and then in return, they would, over a 2-year period, give you some A-Star coins. So that's how I initially started. So then kind of fast forward a little bit. So the technology started to come out through the different parachains, and you started to see all these different things come out in terms of like the different apps and dApps and all the different features were starting to roll out. And so this is how it transitions to me starting to become into the A-Star degens. So I had a lot of great ideas. Well, for me, I thought they were good ideas, but but in my mind, I was like, this would be awesome if this, and that. So
how it starts, and then you get sucked into the entrepreneur world, and then you're trapped, and then you can never get out. You can't get out.
Yeah, so I was rather enthusiastic about some of the things, and then so I started to research the different apps or dApps that were going to be on A-Star. I do a lot of research, so that's why So I've looked at a lot of different chains and technologies. But the main thing, if we're focused on A-Star, the main thing that I had noticed was I was looking at different opportunities in terms of what was being built on there. And that's how I came across the A-Star degens. I was like, okay, what's this particular NFT about? So at first, the way it works on what makes A-Star different than most other blockchains. So like when I say blockchains that build apps, we're talking like your Solanas, we're talking about, Ethereum, we're talking about all these different chains.
That's a great one. Good. I'm glad you picked up on that, because I was just going to ask you that, what you think makes it different. Go ahead.
Yeah, so this is what A-Star makes it different. So this is what separates A-Star from all the rest is the feature of, well, two things, but the main thing is dApp staking. It's where it gives developers income based on their popularity on the chain. And so pretty much if you start a dApp or an app on A-Star and the community supports you, there's this tiering system now, but the more the community supports you, they will give you monthly income. Okay. And that helps. Sometimes it helps with development. Now this has been down from the beginning.
With ice cream.
Oh, that's nice. Look, we know you're in reality now. Cat's out the bag. So
I'm on a live show. Bring me ice cream.
Yeah, you
okay, but that's only an ice cream in his hand. He still hasn't touched anything in the background.
I know, right?
Sure, thank you. I'm on a live show in front of God knows how many people, but thanks for the ice cream.
I think I see that woman in the background like for the 10th time already.
Exactly. She's burning some calories. She's burning calories. That's all that is. She's just walking in a circle.
Yo, you remember the part in the Matrix where the lady in the red dress walks by?
Yes.
Lady in the red dress.
I just imagine that.
Go ahead, Lamar.
But I really see her like for the 4th time at least in the background. I think she's walking circles.
Hey, she's trying to get our attention. That's all that
is. She's
but,
trying. Go ahead, Lamar. Don't mind me with this big ass ice cream.
So essentially, so the dApp staking, the reward you get, and so they get income, and then you also get the interest as well as a staker. So I was looking at the different dApps, and I came across the community of A-Star degens. And then I realized, okay, so what makes these NFTs different? Like, why are they such a big community? Well, one of the big things is that they have a very big treasury, and with this treasury, they actually help to develop a lot of the different apps that are coming out on there. So they were supporting them with their treasury. That was one. The other thing with this particular NFT, they had a lot of community awards. So if you hold it, you vote, you participate. They sometimes have different community awards. They try to do that on a monthly basis. Then the other thing is the NFT gives you access to be able to make proposals to do what you want with the NFT. And that sold me. So that's when I started like, oh, okay, I had all these creative ideas. I was like, you know what? We should take some of this money in the treasury and diversify it, man. Get some of that in Polkadot, get some over here and there, and let's generate some more interest and not just have it all in A-Star. So that was one of my proposals. So and it got approved. So I ended up coming up with a lot of different ideas, and like 3 or 4 of them got approved, and we were able to do all these different initiatives. And they worked so well that the community had voted me in as a council member to be able to. Yeah, and now I'm actually over partnerships. So that's why I do a lot of the AMAs, like we are.
How we met. That's how we met. Yeah.
Exactly. So I'm over partnerships and starting those conversations. That's pretty much my story. And now we're here today. We're the last 2 things when it comes to what we have that we're rolling out. We have a brand new website that's rolling out. We also start this thing called the Decentralized Voice, where so the one other things where when you're built on Polkadot, so A-Star, Hydra, all these different apps that you have, Ala and all that, those particular apps, one of the things that they have, these layer ones or these communities, is they have a built-in governance where people can vote. And the A-Star Degens, they use that treasury to make gigantic proposals that try to get things approved. So wherever we do on A-Star, when it comes to Soneium and all that, we're voting for it. But because we have such big treasury and the community of the NFTs in the Discord, we kind of have these discussions on what we want to support. So it allows us to help with the decentralization of A-Star, because we can use this massive bag of A-Star to be able to do votes. So it's not as centralized with, just a few amount of people voting. So that's essentially where we are today. And now we're having this discussion here with y'all about Soneium, and we're in the process of bridging over our NFTs to Soneium. And the main benefit of that, and I'll wrap up, the main benefit of that is because it's the entertainment layer, right? And our NFTs, remember I told you we can vote and we have the ability to do what we want with them. Our NFTs, we want to be able to have them incorporated with a lot of the entertainment. So we want to get into video games and have them put into that. And that's what started some of our discussions and different things like that. And we also have some stuff where the NFTs are going to be involved with possibly some staking and have special bonuses with some of the apps on Soneium as well. Some of those discussions we're still trying to work out, so I can't really disclose exactly all the different ones at the moment, but we are in conversations where we're trying to give more and more utility to the NFT.
That's pretty cool. So, I have a couple questions. I want to bounce back to you, Wasim, and get a little bit of your feedback as well. Your entrepreneur, your journey jumping into this and starting Chainsight, like what inspired that? I actually have a couple different questions. The question I'm going to ask you both, which I think is going to be important for onboarding people, is if you had to explain Web3 to, like, let's say your grandparents, how would you describe the Web3 in general? Because for a little history lesson, which I usually like to go over this every once in a while for people, what was Web 1, Web 2, Web 3? If you're old enough, like I'm sure we're all older and we remember, Web 1, 99, the internet bubble, Netscape, bubble popped, gave way to Web 2. What was Web 2? Web 2 was the social scene. Web 2 was MySpace, Facebook, basically all the social applications, which gave way to Web 3, which is getting back to actually Web 1, because the idea of Web 1 originally was decentralization. That was the entirety, really, of the web. So for you, Wasim, like, how would you describe, one, Web 3 to, let's say, in a sentence to people, because it is a complicated thing to describe, and two, Tell me a little bit about ChainSight and what you guys are building in your journey as a founder there.
And I'm not
Sure.
even old enough to actually know Web 1.
Yeah.
I only ever knew Web 2 onwards,
Damn. I guess if I'm explaining, my grandparents about what Web3 is, I'll just tell them it's the 70s and 80s where it was all about community. People were actually like looking after, when you were a kid, sleazy. Especially this goes out to you. Like if you were a kid back then, if you go out, like everyone knew you were out. Like everyone was supporting you. They will scold you. Like random guy just coming up saying, "What the hell are you doing out at 6 p.m.?" Right? That was basically the community that I've probably grown up, and that feels very, very, lost. I think back in 2000s when social started coming in, people were, very building another community within, digital platform. But again, if I'm explaining someone older, then I'll just say it's back in the 70s, 80s,
That's a good
and you'll
explanation.
love it.
I would agree. I think the social layer, it's really changed things. I remember when I was growing up, like my mom or anybody would kick us out the house and say, like, don't come back until the lights go off on the street or something like that. Like it was all community based. It was very much like I think about it now where like people go to their school bus at like 8, 9, 10 years old and they have their parents with them. When I was younger, you went by yourself. It's like weird. It's kind of like how society has changed. It has radically changed into this kind of world where things have gotten, it almost feels like even though the internet was supposed to bring us together, there was like a distance that was created, which is ironic. I think the irony in that's pretty strong. But that way, that being said, leading into the segue, a little bit about your journey with, ChainSight and becoming a founder, because you clearly got bit by the Web3 bug, and that's a hard one to shake.
Sure. So coming, with the past, being in family office, looking at investments, I basically had personally $3.2 billion as to manage. And, as mid-20s, I would say like 26, 27 years old, that was mind blowing. But going to VC myself as a Web3 VC, have done, time there. It just started looking really boring at that moment. Everyone was, talking about, I think when it comes to the Web2 VC, it means a lot where there is a social impact. There is some kind of, helping hands, I would say. And then it started turning into Web3 VC was the same, but at the same time, it started becoming too much about liquidity money.
That's a topic. We're going to want to get into that because I come from the same world that you go, actually. So we're going to have to talk about that. I want to hear more about yours, but remind us to come back to that because a lot of people don't understand this space. This VC space is radically different than venture capital and Web 2. It is radically different than it was last cycle or even 2021, especially because we're in our raise right now at Posse. And I'm telling you, this raise, this is radically different than anything in the past, man. It's a crazy experience. Right. But go ahead.
Yeah, so going through the VC, I started looking into like portfolios, started looking into all this. I did meet my co-founder when he was still, doing different project, and it went to a point where I was like, okay, so we're as ChainSight, we're doing like data providing, right? So it's like Oracle service, simple as it is, but
needed,
when you're an investor. You're deploying into projects who's raising, right? They're raising $1 million, $2 million on a seed round, stuff like that. But what you don't see as a community or what you don't see is that they have to pay the data provider, right? Even though they're called decentralized provider, Oracle, you still pay quite a lump sum, right? If you have been on Aster or if you have been, within the team, you'll probably know about it. But there's a huge chunk of money that gets into it, but does not get really distributed to the community itself. It was more of I'm a service provider, but I'm just doing my thing calling it as Web3. So there wasn't, once you're connected, you're connected. But at the same time, what we wanted to make sure that is, and what we've seen is any projects, right? Their survival rate is about maybe 2 years, and then die off. You have a ghost account on Twitter that hasn't, get uploaded. So every like 2 years, project dies off, and most of the when we did interview, we basically found out that most of the money chunk goes into the data provider.
It goes
And
into
that's
infra.
where
Infra in general. So like
infra.
this cycle right now is very much about two things. It's all about AI and infra. And it's just like when you speak with VCs, like, infra is like big. That's why Third Web, like we're incubated by Third Web. That, that was one of the things that we noticed right away. Like a lot of people, if you're building in the AI or the infra wave, like you'll tend to get a little bit more traction just because people know, like, have a lot of the issues that went on with early Web3, as you remember, was fragmentation. So seeing how fragmented everything was, the ability to abstract all that with things like Third Web provides or data providers like yourself to provide these people with necessities. There was a study that was done recently that was actually quite shocking. It was an overwhelming majority. It was around like 80 some percent. Don't quote me on the exact number, but it was in the 80s of people in Web3, especially in the financial side of the industry, are completely illiterate, financially illiterate. It's crazy how many people actually know. They have an idea on the surface of, what they're, even founders, many founders, of what they're building in. They understand what a node is. They understand what an Oracle is. They understand maybe what RPCs are on a very surface level, but actually having an understanding of the infrastructure and how all this works, not many people do.
Yeah, if I could add to that too.
No.
If I could add to that, it's like just understanding the whole tokenomics of all these different ecosystems. And you get people that focus on the price of the coin, not understanding that the market cap is more important a lot of times because it's more about the money in the project versus the actual coin itself. Because it's going to go up 10%, it's going to go up 10% regardless of what but it's
being able to pull your money out. I know people. Listen, I have friends of mine right now. I mean, myself, I got caught up in this with a meme coin last cycle, where like literally you're sitting on a 7-figure, exit, and you can't get it out. You can't get it out. Like,
but just knowing those type of things. Yeah, knowing those type of things and understanding token supply and inflation and all these different numbers. You person might be understanding like investments and stuff, but what about this new technology when it comes to the actual coin itself? And then on top of that, what blockchain is it built on, and what type of dexes there are going to be, and all these other different things.
More importantly, how much TVL is on a chain. Like, people don't realize, listen, at the end of the day, and this is the subject that even blockchains want to avoid. I like the nitty gritty. I like to get in and make people sweat a little bit. But the conversation that most people will avoid if you get in a room with protocols, when I worked at CryptoSlam as a CMO, a majority of all the work I did was with protocols. We were a data company. Like, I spoke with protocols. So like when you get into that conversation and you get into TVL and an onboarding, it becomes a whole nother subject, because that's the reason why when you first have an incubator pop up on a chain, like, here's the playbook. Blockchain starts up. They start with $100 million fund. What ends up happening is they bring people in. Who gets first? DEXs, infra provider, people that are going to be able to bring in and lock in TVL. After you get the TVL, then we move to marketing and the Galaxy campaigns and all the stuff that comes after that.
It's like a 101. Yeah.
The vanity metrics and everything else. But go ahead, Wasim. You were telling a little more.
Yeah. So what we wanted to do is we wanted to kind of help the project founders, builders, right, in the space to make it ease, make it more, I mean, when someone talks about faster, cheaper, when it's L1 or L2, you're like, oh, there's another one upcoming. But what we wanted to do is we wanted to make sure that the user experience as a builder becomes ease when it comes to accessing data, because data shouldn't be expensive. Data shouldn't be inaccessible. It should be accessible and cheap, and any data that should be on chain.
Yeah, but
So what we started building was basically like a no-code environment for devs to actually deploy their own Oracle, but also get incentivized out of it. So why I mentioned about Chainside being a quick data network is basically once you have more participants within Chainside to bring in data, the overall ecosystem cost gets lower, as well as it creates the innovation within the chain site. Then what we can do is we can actually provide those data outside, whether it's another friendly Oracle providers, whether it's institutional finance, whether it's the entertainment corporates, as well as the crypto industries itself. So
interesting.
just wanted to do the good deeds, I guess.
No. Listen, I think a lot of those things people tend to overlook, but they don't realize that it's those little things that are the most important. The reality is those that have really been in tech that understand it. I was, an engineer for so many years before I ever made it anywhere else. And then I got sucked into corporate and I found myself doing less and less development, which I missed. It's probably one of the big reasons why I jumped back in Web3. I miss being able to get my hands dirty and get involved. And next thing you know, I found myself in the VC world myself. At 27, I was in the C-suite in Web2, and I was like, what the heck is going on here? And I didn't even know how I got there. I felt so underqualified, but, I guess I had a lot of great mentors, a lot of good people around me. I guess that, I give more credit to the people. I always tell people, good leaders are great followers. They build teams, they get people around them. If you're the smartest person in the room, then usually there's a problem. But I say that to say this. Over the last 30 years, especially my experience in tech, it's really been about data. Like data, people, you can dress it up any way you want. You can dress it in blockchain. You can dress it in social media. You can dress it in a search engine. But the reality is, at the end of the day, in the 90s, there wasn't enough access to data. We had to go to libraries, for anybody that remembers that. And now,
Yep.
Our issue is that there's too much data and we can't even parse or even sort through a majority of this, for lack of a better term, this fucking data. And the reality is now, look at Facebook. Is that a social media app? It's an ad platform. People drive ad revenue. Like, if it's free, then you're the product. Like everybody knows that by now. These are all buzzwords. But I think the reality is data has driven this industry, and finding unique ways. This is why I think, you look at Polymarket, why prediction markets blew up so big. When you look at what's going on in that field, it's because people were able to take this data and make informed decisions. This is what from VC, and you can look at Wall Street, whether you're in stocks, bonds, Forex, whatever you're involved in. The reality is data is power. And I think we're still figuring out in this industry how to execute on data, how to make that data manageable, because there is so much of it out there, and put it in a way that is useful. Because here's the thing. One of the problems with Web3 is you have to keep feeding the beast. And what I mean by that is for example, on a base level, it's really simple. It's finance, it's money. But that doesn't keep people in. That doesn't bring liquidity in all the time, right? You can only hold up a 2,000% APR for so long before next thing you know, you're like, okay, well, what the hell am I doing here? We have to figure out reasons to keep people here, to onboard people. Why would they want to come? For example, I was looking at the document that Sony just released when they're talking about the new marketplace that they want to do, basically IP rights. And there was something with Venom, Spider-Man. I'm sure if you saw that recently on one of their posts.
Yep.
And it's interesting because not once in that document, in that Medium article, not once did they mention that this was going to be a mint, that they just called it a digital collectible, which is smart. It's interesting to see how Sony is going to approach this, because we've been saying this for years, like the buzzwords, like the minting and all that stuff, that might get VCs through the door, which is what people tend to use that shit for, but it won't bring retail. Institutional investment is here, but that is a misnomer. A lot of people don't realize that's like, people are paying attention to the carrot, to this, like, phantasm of like all this money pouring in from like BlackRock and hedge funds and all this stuff like that. But that doesn't translate to the everyday user. So in your opinion, and you guys, which I want to bounce back to you, translating this into the everyday user, what do you think it's going to take at this point? Or do you think it's already begun the retail journey. Like we saw bits and pieces of this early on when sneaker companies and things, but there wasn't product market fit yet, it seemed. So what do you think about the current state moving into this bull market on the retail side of that now? Either one of you can take away on that. And if you want to add to that, Sleazy, by all means.
I would, I'll chime in real quick on that.
Yeah.
I think a lot of that's going to come down to ease of use.
Okay.
And the more we make it look like Web 2, but with the tech behind it, where people don't even have to know that this work. That, and I've heard this, somebody said like 2.5 or something like that.
That's how we say that all the time. We're saying we're not a Web 3 company, we're a Web 2.5 company.
Yeah, 2.5. So it's kind of like this happy medium where you don't have to worry about bridges and transferring and all these different stuff, that it's all going on in the back end, because it comes down to keep it simple, stupid. You know what I'm saying? And the easier you make stuff, the more adoption you get. So as we transition to these what they call omni chains, where everything you don't even know where you're on, and you go and you're transitioning from blockchain to blockchain, and it's very smooth and effortless and stuff like that. It reminds me similar to like video games. Let's say you
love games, so go for it.
Yeah, let's say like Mario back in the day, where they had just a little straight line platformer, but then then you have to go to another. Then you have to go to a whole nother zone, and it take a long time to go to another zone. And then fast forward, when you had these open worlds now, where you could just easily just go all over the place, no matter what you want, and it was it's not as segmented. Like the stages were segmented in Mario, and now the games are like open platform where you just move freely. So it's this whole moving freely and ease of use. And because people don't want to think sometimes. They get off work and they just want to go in there and buy something and call it a day, or play a video game and call it a day. They don't want to figure out like, okay, is this, this, all these different things, So that's one thing. And then the last thing I would say is one of the things that excited me about the video game aspect of thing is it was this game called this movie called Ready Player One. And
of course, stop it, man. That changed. That was
with the whole metaverse and this and that. And I really can see crypto,
it is going towards that for sure,
and all that going into that, where I can see Soneium as like this whole distribution platform of like a mall, where you're seamlessly in this virtual world, playing video games, going to concerts, work and all these different things, almost like how they had virtually with this whole metaverse and Ready Player One. So that's kind of where I see the fun aspect, bringing people, and then also the ease of use, making it easy for people to come and enjoy themselves.
So, well, go ahead, Wasim. I want you to go next. What are your thoughts on this retail side of this? I'll begin with a question for you. Do you think that there is a killer app in Web3 that has not been made yet? And is that the barrier to entry? Or is it maybe that a marketplace like eBay hasn't stepped in? Magic Eden, you can argue, Tensor, OKX, they're all big platforms, but it's not like going into a cart, just adding to your cart, using your PayPal, calling it a day. Do you think that there's still, like, for instance, I'm very close friends with Halsey, one of the big guys over at MoonPay, who, is part of the 500 million raise. He's a good friend of mine. Dude's awesome. Shout out to you, Halsey. I know you tune in. So the reality is for them, they're doing payment systems. So is there a killer application that just hasn't been made yet? Like, what is that deciding factor that takes us from, a couple 100,000 users to mainstream, like you're going on your Amazon cart and you're clicking?
All right. I still think, Uniswap was a very, innovative product as a DeFi. You're talking about, stepping back in the days on the gaming. Those, it's not that old, but it feels very old. But I think one thing that we do not underestimate is that we play in such a small kind of community within the community. Um, we were the one who kind of distinguished what Web3 is,
Hmm.
because back in Web2, no one was calling it Web1.
Nobody.
I've never heard about Web1 or Web2 until Web3 came in, right? So that distinguishment would, it's a good narrative that we're in Web3, we're in crypto, and however the meaning of what Web3 should be is so different comparing to in each country, each region, each people, and that's confusing the lot to the retailers. And if
Okay.
we're trying to bring in like Soneium, I guess, as a Sony brand, I'm pretty sure other brands are coming in, or they have already come, or they were building it, but Sony came in early, right? So once these players starts coming in, I think what it's gonna shake is it's like the ETF, to be honest, right? When the ETF came in on the Bitcoin, like you've seen the massive liquidity flow in, like within what we have done in the past few years, it just washed in 1 day or 2 days. So it's going to happen, I guess, when it comes to corporates really understanding how it should be, how the Web3 narrative should be working, then they'll bring in what they were good at with Web2 and bring the killer app. I think, as you mentioned with L2, L1, it's a good narrative. So Soneium bringing entertainment IP, and I think Sota was mentioning about bringing the idol group on chain as a first one. Check, and then you've got the music, movie, gaming. But Sony brand should not be as only Sony. It needs to be, if it's an entertainment layer, it just needs to be entertainment layer as an
Agreed.
IP as well. So killer apps, not yet. If you look back in the history, uh, the stock market was something similar to what DeFi is happening, and it hasn't reached the potential to it. If we look into gaming, gaming itself, I'm still, I would not pay for something, subscribe on the app, and I would still enjoy it. That enjoyment started becoming like money. That's why I think this era of, I don't know, I think I'm okay to say, kids um, is looking into, financial money, very quick returns. And these are something that adult should be taken responsible, that there's more to life,
Mhm. You're not
that
wrong.
kind of mindset.
You're not wrong.
Yeah.
How do you balance decentralization with user experience? Is it even important?
I think,
Listen, let's really ask this too. I'm going to throw this at you too. Does the fucking decentralization matter? I think it does, because I think let me just say this. I think Web3, which I agree with you. I hate the term now at this point. It feels dirty. But the idea of blockchain technology represents two things, and two things only: opportunity and freedom. That is what it represents to me. At its most basic level, it is opportunity and freedom. Freedom from, your own stuff, privacy, IP rights, and then opportunity, which anybody can make it here. It's like, it's like the melting pot of entrepreneurship. Like, you can build anything. But go ahead.
okay, let me start. So I think when it comes, I mean, again, decentralization, DAOs, that's great concept as Web3, right? There's the freedom, there is a financial freedom as well. Um, but at the same time, when I was going through, the forum, and I think VAR is able to speak since he's on that, is what I've seen from external is when you have too much power within the community, you try to follow him or her in that terms, but it looks like it's another centralization within the decentralization.
It is. It
And
is.
that's happening. And when you look into proposal, and I do go through like a lot of proposal in different ecosystem, also is that people do not talk in what the fact is. so here's the on-chain data to actually prove what it is. It's more of ideas. Yes, if you like me, you like me. If you don't, you don't, kind of concept. So there's still a huge emotion to it. Emotion plays a huge factor when it comes to DAO, but not only. And what I want to change is that there needs to be a data factor, on-chain data fact that you can actually prove it, and that will change probably the idea, the way of looking into it, way of voting, the system itself. So if I can contribute to that, I mean, that's the whole concept of chain side. So
No, I love it. I think it should be as systematic as possible. I tell people, like, retail is here. And Sleazy, I want to get your opinion on how you feel about this on this subject. I think retail is here. I tell people all the time when it's boring as shit. When it's like when this becomes completely boring, and I mean boring, to the point where like it's like clockwork now. You go down to the ATM, you swipe your machine, you go online, you get your checks. Right now I worked, like I said, I was a CHRO for a company in Web2. And the one thing that is now just starting to happen is people are getting like crypto in their investment portfolio. So like when you first sign with the company and, you go through your comp package and you negotiate your plan. So some of these pension companies and ETFs, you see this all the time. I'm always watching the inflows and the outflows just to see how the market's moving. But just in general, we're now starting to see those things get added to some major companies picking them up in their portfolio. So like sooner or later, I think that stuff plays a role in it too. As millennials are getting older and we're looking through our comp packages and we're like, wait a minute, a portion of, your holdings is going towards whatever this is. Like that's going to matter too. I think that plays a small part in it. But I think what you said, the reality is a lot of this is still emotional. And this is the fun part. I tell people all the time, like, you're in the fun part. Like, this is the exciting part. This is literally 1994 all over again. Like, there is no difference between now and the 90s when it comes to the technological feeling that's in the air. And I think another thing that a lot of people don't realize, this is the hard part. This is reality. Not everybody's cut out for this. You know what I mean? Like, it's just plain and simple. Unfortunately, not everybody is built for it, because it does take a certain mentality to push through this. I imagine when you were as a VC, think of how many projects came across your desk every day, some that were actually really good, but it takes the 1% is the 1% for a reason, because only 1% of people are capable of doing it. And that always has been my opinion. You know what I mean? Like, that's like me being real. Is some things gate kept? Absolutely. Is there still emotions involved? Absolutely. I do think that the technology needs to get to a point where it's completely automated so people can do what they do best. Humans, they shine when we do the number one thing we're good at. That's create shit. So until like we can get the processes and procedures automated that are the underlying layer of this, the infrastructure that manages all this, which I agree with you, everything you're saying, data is such an important part of that. That's when I think we can move forward. LeVar, what's your take on that?
Yeah, well, kind of picking up where you kind of left off at,
Yeah.
Automated. That's where this whole what they call it, agents. The agent narrative. AI agents. So that's where a lot of stuff's going to be automated. So you get, you have songs be automated. You have pictures and you have papers and writing and stuff is being. So now you can have it helps with the efficiency. So now you can just be more creative. So that kind of goes into what that next major thing is actually it's probably going to be obviously the AI with the AI agents. And the next thing after that, the killer app that's going to probably come out is something dealing with security. Security, with this whole quantum computing and all this other stuff. And that's going to be one of the next major things. And there's a technology coming out for that too later. But I'm really looking at those type of things. Can I piggyback back to when we were talking about the DAO and the voting? And
of course you can. Yeah, I'm going to want, because the one thing I'm going to want Sleazy to answer on after you're done, the one thing I want Sleazy to jump into is the AI, because he knows a lot about that as well. Like, that's a big thing for him, DeSci. And kind of like that's kind of the field he's been working in lately, for those that don't know. But go ahead, LeVar.
Yeah, so a few things. When it comes to the voting, you're right. A lot of different places don't have the voting down. So the great thing with Polkadot and A Star, because A Star is built on Polkadot for a portion of it, is they have something called OpenGov, which is a tool that allows you to vote very easily right through like Nova Wallet and different platforms. You just vote very easy, smooth. And one of the biggest differences, this is one of the reasons why I came to Polkadot, is they also, I was doing a DAO. The first DAO I was in was this DAO on Ethereum. But every time I had this whole, I wanted to be involved with a project. And I was like, I wanted to feel like I was helping with the decisions and all this other stuff. And I was like, yeah, I like that. I don't like that. And, just, I wanted to be part of the voting. But it was so expensive. Man, it was like,
gas is a motherfucker, bro. That's another problem in Web3 we have to solve.
Yeah, man. So I started sweating. I was like, good goodness. It's like $15 here, $20 there just to vote. I'm like, listen, it ain't that important to me.
Real, bro. It's like a gas, like filling up your gas 10 years ago.
Man, so that ended real quick. It ended real quick. I think I got to vote 10, and I was like, man, I can invest this in something. But then I discovered the stuff on Polkadot, and there is a blockchain / protocol, because on Polkadot the parachains are actually layer 1s. So, but one of them is called.
Shout out crypto. Shout out to everybody. We're getting comments, guys. I see all your comments. We love you guys. Thank you for all you guys that have been tuning in for this whole hour almost. It's dope to have you guys. So if you have any questions, be free to keep shooting them. Go ahead.
Absolutely. Yeah. So one of the on Polkadot they have the OpenGov, and all different blockchains have the ability to incorporate like the OpenGov type technology. So one actual blockchain does it the best, that I think personally, is hydration. Because what hydration would do, Hydration Network, which is it's kind of like the Uniswap of the Polkadot, but it has way more features than Uniswap. Some like DCAN, and it has over-the-counter trading. It has all types of different things. It has Bitcoin, Ethereum. It's interoperable with different chains and stuff like that. And a lot of people don't even notice. You can even switch your interest rate from Polkadot into other coins automatically, and just let it mine. I actually did some different strategies, but what they really do well as well, and I really want people to know, is the way the government is set up, where you vote, you get interest on your coin for staking, but the interest, you can't access it for like 2 years. But the way you reduce the time to be able to access it is by voting. So if you vote and you lock up your coins to vote, and you keep voting, it reduces the time of your unlock. So they incentivize you by getting interest on your money by your ability to vote. And that actually makes a person be like, hey man, I'm trying to get to my interest, so I'm logging off. Like, listen, reading these different things, I'm voting religiously. And on top of that, because it's on Polkadot, it's only like fractions of a penny to do all the swaps and trades and things like that. So that's one protocol, or if you want to call it layer 1.
Shout out, by the way, we're streaming on a lot of different platforms: LinkedIn, Twitch, YouTube, X. We hit over 100 people, so thank you to everybody that's tuned in. I just want to make sure we got 100 eyeballs on us. Go ahead.
Absolutely, that's great. Salutes to all y'all. But yeah, that's the main thing. So somebody doing it right with the voting, I would say that's great, because it actually incentivizes it. And then I'm in a DAO. I'm actually like I said, a council member in a DAO. And so some of these different mechanisms and thought process are some of the conversations I've been having with the other council members about how you can kind of try to incentivize people to participate in some of the ways that you can bring people in to want to vote and stuff. Because the less people you have voting, the more centralized it is. And you kind of want it where you have a lot of voices, and so that it's not just a few people controlling what's going on. So that's one of the things I wanted to talk about, was one in an area where I saw it was done really well.
Thank you. I agree. I think it's awesome feedback. So that leads us into our final thing, which is a hot topic right now. I know us at Posse Studios, like we have one of like 8 AI launch pads in like the industry, which we're really excited to come out. So we've kind of been really pushing the cutting edge, is about as forward as you can be. And to be forward, like it's been crazy. It's been a pain in the ass, even figuring it out. Like, we have an amazing engineering team. Shout out to our CTO, Nick, who worked at EA Games. Like, the guy's a rock star. And it's crazy when you're developing something that there's no roadmap. Like we're using ELIZA framework, OpenAI, like we're digging into every piece of documentation that is out there and figuring out how this all goes on the fly. It's been like a nutty experience. So Sleazy, I leading into the final question, which is, I think one of the big things that's going to solve some of these problems that Wasim was bringing up in data, in DAOs, it seems to be AI. And then here's a big one, shout out to Crypto, a comment. He was saying so much it could be overwhelming. Hydration needs automation, AI agents, etc. So it's very clear that there are some people that perhaps don't have the time to figure out how all this stuff works. So maybe AI agents is the answer to that, on-chain transactions and getting involved. What's your take on the AI scene and how AI is going to play a role in blockchain, Sleazy? Because you have a lot of feedback on this subject.
Okay, so I'm going to say that I understand why you came to this conclusion, but that's not actually correct to assume that I actually know that much about it. I'm going to explain why.
Go for it.
So I've been in the DeSci industry for like half a year before I gave up on it. On paper, you can assume that DeSci and AI are like that. AI is a subset of DeSci, but in practice, they have nothing to do with each other.
Mhm.
And okay, I'm going to explain why. Like AI, it is, well, whether it's decentralized or not, it's debatable because it started with OpenAI. OpenAI started very decentralized. Now it's a bit more centralized, but that's a very broad topic. But other than that, if we think about what DeSci is, like over 90% of DeSci is centered around this company called Molecule. And what it does is it raises funds for sort of charity type of research for science. And then they give you coins as it is the same thing as a meme coin. Essentially, it has zero utility. It will never have utility. They always say this coin that you're given, you can resell it, but it will never have any guaranteed utility. The project that is associated to can give you some kind of utility, but it is never guaranteed. So really, DeSci is
It's like crowdfunding. It's like crowdfunding.
Yeah, DeSci is
Okay.
it's kind of
Well, I know you
charity
spent
work,
a lot of time
essentially.
research on AI. I know, like, that's something that was always important to you, a subject in me, and you have a lot of conversations. What's your take personally on AI being integrated into the blockchain world? Is that going to solve abstract some of the problems that are here? Like, what are your thoughts on the user experience with that?
Yeah, so the way so when I was looking at what it can automate a lot of stuff. Like it can automate tweets being sent out. We actually already know a couple on Soneium who do that already. Our upcoming GitHub platform is going to do exactly that, but you're not going to have to actually work on it yourself. You can just use our platform and it will do the thing for you. Like it's just a very simple one page. So that is going to be a pretty big deal for automating a lot of stuff. But also, I think that while it's all like very clickbaity in terms of very niche applications, I think it's not going to be as big of a deal as some people might think, because at the end of the day, AI is at this point where it can do a lot, but it also is not suitable for many other situations. So I think it's going to be pretty great, but maybe not as great as some people think.
Hey, that would be true. So one day soon, we got from Crypto Grandpa, he said one day soon AI will be doing a Saloon session. Funny enough, Luna, I mean, you already see this, what's going on with virtuals and other platforms. Like, people right now have, live streaming avatars, which is kind of where everything's moving. Like it's going to change content creation for sure. Just like onboarding processes. Like I know a lot of companies personally right now, good friends of mine who use AI for their onboarding process. They have like narrators and stuff like that. So closing question is what role do you see? So now that Sleazy, you went, I want to close this out with Wasim and LeVar. What role do you see AI abstracting or playing in decentralization? Because you have now concepts like proof of humanity, and things like this, where I think it's a match made in heaven. But what do you guys see the industry moving towards with AI, and will that have a positive or negative impact on the blockchain industry? Either one of you, Wasim or LeVar, you guys feel free to take that.
So so the main question, just to make sure I got you correctly, is this pretty much how AI is going, my thoughts on where AI is going to take us? Is that essentially it?
And as far as a blockchain in the industry, like, do you see that playing a pivotal role in perhaps abstracting some of the barriers to entry of reason why people get involved with Web3? Or do you think that it can be something else? Like, what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, so I think a lot of, all right, so the way I see the AI working, and is I think it can educate you quickly. Maybe you can go in and it give you a more accurate, like, all right, if you type in, like you go to ChatGPT real quick and you ask it a question, it can really, really quickly give you more accurate information. Because sometimes you go to the internet and you don't know if it's real accurate, but maybe it can give you more accurate information that maybe you can rely on. You don't have to like check 1,000 different resources. So it makes it more efficient. I think it'll help with the efficiency. I said this earlier, but it's going to help with the efficiency, because if I am a person that's working on an app and I can have the AI generate the code and I just need to check a few things just to make sure it works a certain way, that means I can spend more time of other areas in terms of creativity of how the app is going to work and things like that. And it might lift the barriers of entry of people that don't maybe have the understanding to do certain things, because now the AI is be able to produce things that normally would be hard that you might have. And it might take, like, to give you an example, when it comes to pictures, it might take a person like 3, 4, 5 days to come up with a real creative picture. But now you got this AI and it generated a picture in like 5 seconds, exactly what you were thinking. Yeah. So now you can be more creative with what your thought process are, and you can just come up with different ideas after ideas after ideas. And then one last thing, and I'll close on what I was thinking was, I can also see, could you imagine, right? You have a wallet. Mm-hmm. This is it ain't out yet, but this is a wallet. This is kind of like I don't know if you know what Embark is, and some So they had this idea with this wallet that could pretty much the wallet, a universal wallet for everything, for all the chains. But imagine a wallet similar to that, but it has an AI agent that you just talk to it and you say, hey, you know what? Go ahead and buy me some.
That's real. So that's one of the things. So be careful what you say. We might build it. Between me and you, that's actually one of the major things that, not just us, a bunch of people are doing right now. So on-chain transactions, where basically you can automate it, or you can be like, hey, listen, I need you, because it all started with hotbots. You remember, it's like anybody that was real degen traders was like using like BonkBot, BananaBot, like all that other good stuff. Like, when everybody was doing like the meme coin cycle on Solana, which is still going technically, but pump fund era. But the reality is you won't even have to go to hotbots anymore. Like, all that shit will be automated. You can log into one experience eventually and just literally probably say, hey, listen, I need to transfer from here to here. Like, it's not, I'll save that for last, because I want to hear what Wasim. I could talk about, before we close out, a little bit of what is possible and what isn't, given the current circumstances.
But pretty much the main thing I was going to say to kind of close on that was pretty much being able to talk to the app and it just do exactly what you want it to do. In a secured way, and it just executes all the different things. So that's one of the things that I believe is going to help with adoption. Like, if I literally can just get an app talk to the app and say, hey, go ahead and buy me some A-Star. Go ahead and go ahead and bring up my app for Soneium, with the posse and stuff like that. Log me in and just talk to the app and then just execute everything for you. On a big scale, like almost everything you say, and it just executes it. I can see that being phenomenal.
It's like Alexa. It's literally it's Alexa. It's literally
but at
Alexa.
another level, because it's being able to work across all these different technologies and do it in a way that's secure. So that's one of the major things. And Sleazy, I did want to ask you a question later, and then I'm pretty much done. The one, since you're big on AI agents, I was looking at this AI agent. It was on Fowler Network, and they had like these AI agents and stuff, and it had like this these codes that like I was like it's like, okay, you go on there, and I was like, I don't even know what these things. Well, you might not know the answers, but I was like, I don't even know what you're supposed to do with these things. So I think, and I'm in crypto, and I research a lot, but I'm like, if for me, it's hard for me to figure out certain stuff.
Imagine what it is for other people.
Remember, I know
you're early. You're early, man. Before
I was like, what am I supposed to do with these codes, man? Say, oh, go into here and this is cloud compute.
We can talk about that. We can talk about that. Remember, a lot of people are so early that it's ridiculous. Go ahead, Susie.
Yeah. Short answer to this: every AI agent is, you take ChatGPT and wrap it up in a nice package. So if you think about it as ChatGPT, it makes a whole more sense. If you just think about that. It just
some people don't even understand that shit yet.
I do. You pretty much put it in Chat GPT and it produces what you want it to do. Is that the, or is it on the back end? You don't do it as a user. You put it in as a code. Is that what
you can use it as a code? So yeah, there's a couple different ways that you can do it. We'll talk about that. I'll get with you on that one.
Yeah, but that's what I'm saying. The main thing is it's confusing. So we gotta. That's the next step. The next step is to use these AI agents are going to need to make things less confusing, because if it's confusing to people that's been in there for years and they work with the technology all the time, imagine somebody that don't even know what Bitcoin is and they just heard about it yesterday.
Agreed. What about you? I was going to say, what about you, Wasim? So AI, closing out, what do you feel about AI?
I mean,
you're in data, so this is a big one. You're in data, so this is a big one.
It's a necessary thing. I mean, it's a movement. It has become a norm, I guess, especially for our, industry, as well as, any IT industry. If you still don't know AI, get the fuck out, right? But at the same time, I think the AI itself is going to go into second generation, third generation, fourth generation. And right now, I think we're still up to it, but somewhere we're not going to start understanding how it gets built. I think yesterday with the US, they started doing the Stargate project, right? $500 billion. And that's it might not be the similar thing as what we're in crypto, but it's definitely something that we can merge off. AI is everywhere. So I'm not surprised that it's going to be implemented. People are already implementing. I think the concern on some of the the DeFi that I've touched was more on the user experience than what is as an AI. But once people start feeding, I think it's gonna get to a point where I don't think we'll be needed as a founder as well. But my fear is that this might be the start of the Skynet from Terminator, and
it's possible.
we have
it's
vanished.
Very possible. It's very. Listen, I'll say this. So, closing thoughts. The reality is this. All AI really is at the end of the day is it automates processes and procedures. That's what it does. So it pulls from a database and it automates things. So instead of you having to manually do things, it's no different than what algorithms do. And this is a whole subject to dig into on another time. But you see this over the last 20 years. There's a lot of things where people say, well, they can argue, is that AI? No, because you could still see things like this in computer science regularly, just simply automating process and procedures. Alexa does stuff like this all the time, call and answer. It's kind of essentially how this all works. But the reality is is what makes this different is its ability to interact with this data in different ways. And that's what I think is really going to be a game changer. It's being able to automate some of those processes that aren't as simple as you just saying, hey, is this a yes or no question? Is this a Boolean? Like, you're able to actually dig into the nitty gritty of all this. And it's going to be interesting to see it all unfold. I do think it goes through stages very much like, Web or blockchain did. But I think it's going to be very much in the next few years. Ironically, people are going to realize that the need, and I'm a firm believer in this, that a match made in heaven was AI and blockchain technology, because there's going to be the need to prove things, especially when we're moving into such a fantastical type of society where you can barely tell what's real and fake anymore. So like the reality is having concepts like proof of humanity, being able to utilize blockchain technology and things like that to solve some of these issues, I think they're going to play a big part. But that being said, listen, man, we made it an hour. We had about 100 people tune in, so thank you for all you guys that are still sticking it out. I can see you guys in the little eyeball on top of my screen. You're amazing. It's been another awesome episode. Listen, the reality is we will be back, and we're going to talk about a whole bunch of other stuff coming up. Make sure, first things first, that you're following these guys. Go check out Wasim. Go check out Shane's site. Go check out A-Star Degens. Like, bunch of cool stuff going down over there. You already know we're building, guys. We're not going to shill. You know who we are. So, check out all the goods. Love you guys. It's been an awesome ride. I mean, if you guys have any final closing thoughts, man, it's a Rizzy.
Yeah, just a quick one. It's funny that we talk about AI and blockchain as if it's one and the same, but AI exists outside of blockchain as well. But the point is, Web3 moves fast, but Web2, like, who in Web2 is even using ChatGPT? Like, individual users, sure. Programmers, sure. But the companies, not really. So yeah, it is a great thing.
Not yet. Remember
and the
that.
same thing.
We're early.
And the same thing with the Metaverse. Metaverse is now like considered part of Web3, even though it didn't get born as part of Web3, but because Web3 adopted Metaverse, now it's pretty much exclusively a Web3 thing. So yeah, that's a wonderful. It's a wonderful sign for the future. We are adopting everything that is great first before Web2.
It's inevitable. That's the power of the internet. All right, guys. That being said, peace.